The human soldier named Dan stepped off the carrier ramp and felt the dry wind of the frontier world sweep against his gear. The sun hung low on the horizon like a glowing coin. His boots pressed into sand that shimmered with faint traces of silver. This world was quiet, almost too quiet, and Dan understood why Command chose him for the mission. He had a calm temperament, steady focus, and the patience needed to interact with a species still wary of humans. Today, he would enter the diplomatic outpost of the Alari people to deliver a message of peace from Earth. He had read files about the Alari. They were tall, graceful, and carried features that made them appear like a blend of crystal and living tissue. Their eyes shimmered as if reflecting starlight. They had endured centuries of internal conflict, so any negotiation with outsiders required delicate handling. Dan expected stiff greetings and formal bows, not warmth or open trust. He was prepared for tension. What he did not expect was to meet an alien who would freeze at the first glance of him, as if struck by something far deeper than fear. Dan approached the entrance archway of the outpost. Soft lights pulsed along the walls, shifting from pale blue to a muted gold. He walked inside and saw a small group of Alari guards standing on both sides of the corridor. Their armor curved like living shells. They watched, but did not move. The air smelled faintly of resin and cool stone. A guide stepped forward, a tall Alari with calm eyes. "Welcome, human envoy," the guide said in a measured tone. "You are expected." Dan nodded and followed. His steps echoed lightly on the polished walkway. He noticed how the architecture flowed in long curves. Number, sharp corners, no right angles. Everything felt like water, frozen in motion. As they approached the main chamber, Dan adjusted his gear and rehearsed the introduction in his mind. He wanted to start strong, show respect, and avoid any gesture that might seem aggressive. He knew humans often appeared too direct to other species. Before entering the room, he steadied his breathing. The guide opened the tall chamber doors and stepped aside. Dan walked in. At the far end of the hall stood an Alari figure dressed in soft silver robes. Her posture was elegant and poised, but the moment she turned toward him, she stopped frozen, as if her body turned to stone. Her eyes widened, then shimmered brighter, and her hands remained suspended mid-movement. It was not fear. It was something else, something deep and overwhelming. Dan stopped as well, unsure what he was seeing. The guide bowed. "Envoy Dan, this is Princess Myra, daughter of the ruling council." Princess Myra. Dan had read her name in the file. She was known for intelligence, calm judgment, and a strong role in the new peace initiative. He expected confidence, maybe even a formal air. Instead, he saw shock, awe, and something like disbelief. She still had not moved. Dan spoke softly. "I come on behalf of Earth to deliver our council's message." Princess Myra did not answer. Her hands trembled slightly. She stepped forward, slow and quiet, as if she approached a vision not entirely real. Her gaze stayed fixed on Dan. She reached him but paused again, trembling as though she balanced between emotion and restraint. He stood still, waiting for her to speak. The princess finally whispered, voice barely audible, "It is you." Dan frowned lightly. "I am not sure I understand." But the princess did not explain. Her expression was filled with something he could not name. The guards at the edge of the hall looked confused as well. Myra regained her calm and straightened her posture. "Forgive me," she said. "Please follow me to the inner garden. There are matters you must hear in privacy." Dan followed. They left the hall and entered a quiet corridor filled with silver vines glowing softly. He could feel the air grow cooler. When they reached the inner garden, he saw a circle of clear pools reflecting the pale sky above. Myra walked to the edge of one pool and stood with her back to him. He waited. After a long moment, she spoke. "Do you recall serving near the region of the Laran Faults during the conflict 3 years ago?" Dan thought back. The Laran Faults, a chaotic border region with shifting alliances. He did serve nearby during a rescue mission. He remembered evacuating refugees after a large collapse caused by unstable tunnels. Many groups were trapped underground. His team dug survivors out for days. "Yes," he said. "I remember the rescue operation." Myra turned toward him slowly. Her voice shook. A young Alari girl was buried in a collapsed shelter, her oxygen fading, her family lost. A human soldier dug through the rubble with his bare hands. He carried her out even when the tremors struck again. She never forgot the light she saw above as he lifted her to safety. She never forgot his voice telling her not to give up. Dan felt a chill. He remembered that day. He remembered pulling a small Alari child out of the rubble. She was unconscious at first, then woke crying and clinging to him. His team transported her to the evac shuttle. She had been so frightened and trembling. He comforted her until she calmed. He remembered her eyes like tiny stars, full of life despite the dust on her skin. But he never learned what became of her. Myra stepped closer. "That child was me." Dan froze. His entire body felt still. The Alari princess he stood before now was the same girl he saved during the collapse. He stared at her, stunned. The reason she stopped earlier now made sense. She remembered his face from the moment she thought she would die. She recognized him instantly. Mira looked down, voice soft. "I did not know your name. I did not know if you lived. But the image of that moment has guided me all these years. I sought peace with humans because one human showed compassion when none of his people were obligated to help." Dan felt something warm rise in his chest. He had saved many during the conflict. He never expected to meet one again, let alone a princess. He felt humbled. "I'm glad you survived," he said. Myra looked up at him. Her eyes shimmered brighter. "You were the spark of hope during my darkest hour. When I saw you today, I could not move. It felt like the past returned in one breath." Dan smiled faintly. "I was just doing my duty." "No," Myra said firmly. "Duty does not make someone dig through unstable rubble with no support. Duty does not make someone risk collapsing tunnels for a stranger. You acted out of heart, not command." Dan did not answer. He remembered those moments vividly. The cries, the dust, the tremors. He remembered his own fear, but forced himself forward anyway. Now the truth stood before him, grown, poised, and filled with gratitude. Mayra walked closer. "Your presence here is more than diplomacy. It is meaning. My people are hesitant to trust humans, but I will speak for you. I will remind them of what you once did." Dan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Yet he also wondered how much she carried all these years. They spent the next hours walking through the garden. Mira shared memories of the rescue details. Dan had forgotten. She described how she woke inside the evac shuttle and asked for the human who saved her. She had cried until the medics comforted her. She described how the council took her in after she lost her family. She worked tirelessly to rebuild bridges between Alari clans and between species. Her voice never wavered from calm, but her eyes held quiet sorrow when she spoke of the collapse and the family she never saw again. Dan listened, offering gentle responses. They walked near a pool where small glowing fish moved in slow patterns. Mira sat on a stone bench, and Dan sat across from her. "There is more you must know," Mira said. "My people fear human expansion. They fear being overshadowed. But I have always believed humans carry balance inside them. You showed me that. Your compassion influenced my decisions more than any council debate. She paused. That is why Earth sent you. They read the old files. They knew you saved an Alari girl once. They did not know she was the princess, but they knew your actions mattered. Don leaned back slightly. So this meeting was not chance. No, Myra said, but my reaction was not planned. I thought I had prepared myself. I thought I would greet you with calm respect. Instead, I froze like the girl I once was. Dan looked at her with gentle understanding. Anyone would be overwhelmed in a moment like that. She smiled softly for the first time since he arrived. I am grateful you are here. The next day, the council assembled for the diplomatic session. The long chamber filled with shimmering lights and layered tones from crystal instruments. Dan stood at the center. Mira stood beside him. When the council questioned him, Mira supported him with quiet strength. She shared her testimony of the rescue. She declared that humans and Alari could build a future not defined by war or fear. Her voice carried weight. And because of her, the council listened with softened hearts. After the session, Dan stepped into the balcony overlooking the alien landscape. Mira joined him. The wind carried gentle warmth. You spoke well, she said. You guided them, Dan replied. Myra looked at the horizon. There is something I must ask. Will you remain here for a while? Our negotiations will continue. Your presence may help. Don considered it. His mission originally required only a short stay, but now circumstances had changed. He looked at Myra. She waited quietly, but with hope in her eyes. I will stay, he said, as long as needed. Mira exhaled softly, relief showing on her face. Thank you. Days stretched into weeks. Dan worked with the council, the scientists, and the cultural teams. Mira met with him daily to exchange ideas and strategies. Their trust deepened. She shared more stories of her youth, of her fair,